What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with another episode of Steelers Touch and Under. We are talking live show today. We are talking all things Mike Tomlin press conference, Cam Heyward, Damontae Kazee, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Minkah Fitzpatrick, George Pickens, everything that's news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers had their press conference today with Mike Tomlin following their loss against the Colts, the 30-13 loss. Really average performance there. We've seen a lot of injuries come out of that game. We've seen a lot of things in terms of players, in terms of suspensions. They could be for the rest of the season. We've seen the continued pressure on Mike Tomlin. It's not looking good for the Steelers right now. Hence, they are set for what I'm calling very messy Christmas, regardless of the result of the Bengals game as that comes up. So I think as we wait for everyone to jump in, Daredevil's in there already. I think Daredevil has like a 99% strike rate of getting into the shows the fastest. I think he's kind of like, you're like money at the free throw line. That's how I kind of see it. But look, I really wanted to cover all these things off because we could have done a million videos on them. That doesn't really help anyone out. That there's a million things you got to watch. There's a lot of different Steelers content you're getting out there. Not everyone will listen to this live. So I really wanted to give you guys something, get that take. Wanted to get any people that do want to join the live chat, want to get your comments in there as well. I think that's pretty important because this affects everyone as Steeler fans right now. Like ultimately, as Steeler fans, it's I don't know, it's just a bit of a punish right now, really. That's just how it feels. But the thing is that we really want to keep it going. We really want to just keep things moving. We want to see positive. We want to see things, progressing from this team. And I think that's probably the most frustrating part about this year. I don't think many Steelers fans deeply in their hearts were resolute that there was going to be a Super Bowl happening, this season. But a lot of fans really just wanted to see the Steelers, progress, do something in the playoffs, win a game. That's what you wanted to see. And that's why it's such a hurtful situation that we're in right now, because you sit there and you're like, it just feels like another wasted season, but we still have a chance to make the playoffs. And that's why we're going to stay committed to covering all things Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's, really what I'm here to do today. So really moving into it, Jedel says, I'm just down the road. He said, this season feels lost, but I'm still exactly. And that's why we're committed to it. There's still something to salvage from this season as well. All right. So I want to crack into it first. Cam Heyward and the protocol concussion. You can't help a concussion. That is what it is. You just can't help a concussion. I've seen people criticize. I've seen Kenny Pickett criticized at times for a concussion. You can't criticize that. You're playing hard if you're getting a concussion. That's part of the sport. And when we talk about Kazee's situation, if concussions weren't a thing, then someone like Kazee for the hit wouldn't get into the trouble that he's now finds himself in. But Cam has missed a lot of time this season, and quite honestly, I think that's kind of an interesting issue for the Steelers going into next season. Hey Jane, welcome to the live chat. I think that is a really interesting issue because Cam Heyward's due a lot of money. Now, I'm not going to, for one, sit here and say the Cam should be cut or traded. I mean, if he wanted to win a Super Bowl and he wanted to be traded, I get it. If he wanted that, I don't think he will. I think he's too much of a leader. But, next year he is due a $22 million cap hit. He is due a $16 million base salary. He's 35. I would love to see it if they went and said to Cam, hey, mate, we want to pull you back in terms of your snaps, so we want to move you more to defensive tackle and let Benton develop. Let's try and get 2 years out of you. Let's play till you're 36, but we're going to have to restructure your contract. We're going to need a bit of money there. I think that's what they should be doing if he plans on staying in the Steelers. I think at the Steelers and contributing there. That's going to be really key. And I'll tell you why. It's exactly what Daredevil has said. Injuries at key positions really put us in this downward trajectory. They did. Now, I put out a video earlier tonight, if you're in the US, earlier today, my time, amidst all this breaking news, because I think it's important. We don't have a heap of views on that one, but it was breaking down the defense, like when I broke down the offense yesterday. And the Steelers have the number one paid defense in the league at $112 million. Interior defensive line, they're spending a lot of money there. I think it's $35 million off the top of my head. And they're spending a lot less at linebacker. They're spending, they're about 18th in the league at cornerback. They're 9th in the league at safety and all those things, right? But that doesn't leave a lot of money for depth. Now, when you go position by position, Holcomb sort of soaks up 6 of the 10 million cap hit on linebacker. Fitzpatrick soaks up like 80+% at safety, when you've got Neal there on like $2 million a year, 2-year deal, $4 million. You got Kazee there about 2.3 off the top of my head. So like most of that is with Minkah. Most of the defensive line is with Cam. It's a little bit more spread because of Ogunjobi. That contract's starting to look like a really bad contract from the front office. But defensive linemen, they are expensive. And cornerback is predominantly made up by Patrick Peterson. So we're investing a lot of money, apart from pulling out Minkah from the mix, we're investing a lot of money in like one really key player on defense. Now, you caveat that with exactly what Jess says, with injuries at key positions. If everyone's fit and healthy, you've got veteran leadership, you've got young guys, a good mix of young, youth and experienced guys that are best in their position. Cam Heyward on his day can be, up there with the best defensive lineman in the league. Minkah's the best safety in the league, regularly gets voted on that on different fan and website polls. And you get TJ in there as the best defensive player overall in the league. Alex Highsmith's probably a top 10 outside linebacker or edge rusher in the league. So the defense is actually, when you look at it, you're like, yeah, that kind of works. But as we've seen this season, I think it would be, Steelers fans would hate to see the lessons not learned this offseason. And that is, you need that depth because you're going to have to count on third and fourth stringers. That is a massive trend in the NFL over the last 2 or 3 years. And you know what that comes from? I think the 17th game. I think not having 4 preseason games, which is fine, leads into that. I think really where the league needs to go is just make a decision, have 2 or 3 preseason, probably 2 preseason, and then have 2 buys during the regular season and have an 18-game season. That is where it probably should go. This 17-game season stuff is a load of crap. I think you can easily add an extra AFC or extra NFC game to each of those conferences. That's probably needed too when you've got 3 wildcard spots, and it will make a big difference, I think. Like, honestly, I think it makes a massive difference into how the injuries are going to go. You can better game manage. But it does 100%. The injuries have seen that downward trajectory because you look at the top 2 guys at linebacker out. Minkah's missed heaps of time. Cam's missed heaps of time. Ogunjobi's looked a bit average. Leal at depth was meant to be our big depth piece. He hasn't played that well, but he's also been out of quite a lot, right? Cornerback, we won't we'll stick there. We've got a lot to cover before I go deeply into cornerback. And then on offense, it's not really had that same injuries. But when you look at the defense and you look at what I said, where there's a marquee player both in performance or veteran leadership on defense, that's missing on offense. And I think that's one of the big problems that we've seen this year. And Daredevil says, Cam deserves a ring. Khan's next moves will help us get there, unfortunately. Yeah, totally. Look, I think this team I think this team has had a lot of misfortune this year. I think they put themselves in a bad position by keeping Canada from the outset. I think they had the best intentions with not having to shake things up for Pickett. It just hasn't worked out that way, unfortunately. But I do think that things are a lot brighter next year if they make the moves. And Marky D, Steelers in Australia, talks about Drew Lock. Daredevil talks about but the thing is that we need Ray Fittipaldo talked about this with Chris Carter on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Sorry, mouthful to say. I think with those blokes we're talking about it, they were talking about going and drafting someone in the 5th or 6th round. I think you got to, not the 7th round. I think you got to go 4th, 5th, get cheaper at the position. Ray doesn't get his numbers right ever on Trubisky, but Trubisky will be about a $6 million cap hit over the next 2 years. But you can free up about $8.9 million in raw cap. That's a big deal. I think the Steelers should do that. That pays for another linebacker on a 2-year deal or pays for a top-end safety. I think you got to go out and do that. Anyway, we've said a lot. Kirk's doesn't like that. We've said a lot there on Cam. I now want to pivot to Damontae Kazee. Now, Damontae Kazee I don't think he should have been ejected from that game. I certainly don't think he should be suspended for 3 games. Plus, and a lot of people have missed this, plus any postseason games that are played. That is in there according to ESPN. That is a big issue. Even Tom Brady came out. The quarterback that's had a million rules created for him, the quarterback that had the refs looking after him, from the team that cheated, from the team that hates the Steelers, even Tom Brady said this is a problem for defensive players. It's not on. Quarterbacks can't lead their wide receivers, and this is just unfair to Kazee. Now, Kazee's previous record with 5 penalties at $59,000 came into play in this. Kazee's been fined, but not just this. He doesn't just miss 3 games plus the playoffs. He's been fined $208,000. Like, Kazee's literally lost something like a sixth of his salary this year to penalties, and fines. So it's absolutely a joke, as Mark says in the live chat. It's BS. It is. It's what are they playing? They're not playing flag football. They're not playing tiddlywinks. It's a joke. I think he'll contest it. They didn't talk about that. Mike Tomlin didn't get into that in his press conference. That is a good thing. You don't want to go speculate that. Mike Tomlin doesn't need to get fines from the league and all that palaver on his plate as well. But it leaves the Steelers really raw at safety this game against the Bengals and for the rest of the season, because Minkah is basically playing with a bung hamstring, a bung knee, and a bung hand. I don't know. I think you guys use bung in the US, but a stuffed up hand, a stuffed up knee, a stuffed up hamstring. You don't recover from hamstrings like you need to in season. He's going to need off season stuff for that. So they're out for this game with him. They're out with Kazee. They've got Killebrew in there. Neal's not back yet. Neal's practically, that one reporter asked, it was actually an intelligent question from Steelers media for once, and it said, "Is Neal done for the season?" And Mike Tomlin was like, "No, not at this stage. At this juncture, he's out for today's game." But Neal hasn't been around for at least, 4 or 5 games now. To me, that just hasn't worked. The Steelers have a big issue at safety. This is why I think a linebacking core will be key this week. This is why they mentioned bring up Miles Jack. Not that he's going to play safety, but what can he do in the box? I think you're going to see a different sort of play in terms of how they play their linebackers. I think you're going to see potentially TJ and Highsmith move inside at times on certain plays, particularly in sub package. Patrick Peterson's going to be moved around a lot. We're going to have to see Levi Wallace step up. I think, Shannon White, who does the global perspective with us, he's probably going to be cheering even harder than usual for Darius Rush to be able to make it into the Steelers cornerback room for press coverage. It's going to be probably really key too, particularly when you think about the Bengals and guys like T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, all those sorts of blokes, and plus their tight ends. But that's a huge narrative for the Steelers for the rest of the season is the penalty. I mean, as Mark said, what's he meant to do? You can't pull up mid-air. Pittman, it's a contact sport. You get hits. It's absolutely a joke. Yeah, exactly, Jay. He's going to be able to predict the future. Or he's got to be the Flash. He's got to move so fast away from it and then go tackle him. Steelers freak. Oh, I missed your comment. Sorry, mate. You said 8 international games forecast for 2025. Yeah, totally. Particularly if they try and do anything Southern Hemisphere. You ranked 41 at safety. Yeah, man. I mean, at this point, I'll be playing tight end before the season's done. Get drafted all the way from Australia. All right, so that was that part. I think on Kazee that I wanted to cover off. Kind of covered Neal. All I can say is I feel like it's I told you so. I went on and on and on and on during the off season, during the preseason, the bye before the season started, first 3 weeks of the season, the bye for the Steelers in season, 3 weeks before the trade deadline, 2 weeks, 1 week during the trade deadline. Fix strong safety. Terrell Edmonds isn't even playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they don't do it. And this is where we're at. If I can see it on the other side of the world, surely the organization can as well. Well, so Steelers Freak brings up an interesting one about the CTA lawsuits. I listened to this past off-season or the off-season before. Might have been off-season before. Depends when it came out. But I listened to Mike Florio's book on the business of the NFL. And he talked about this. What a lot of people aren't fully aware of is that technically and legally, under the last collective bargaining agreement, because of the money that was put into for veterans and retired players in the retirement fund, it covered all CTE up until basically the end of that coming collective bargaining agreement. So it is virtually impossible for the NFL, if anyone's actually sued the NFL. Now, that doesn't mean the optics of the NFL, it's different. That doesn't mean that it looks bad. That doesn't mean that I think there's different rules if players, if there's anything that changes in a future collective bargaining agreement, that could then put into scope any players that played in the new collective bargaining agreement but were played in this era under the old collective bargaining agreement. So there's a lot of legalities and technicalities and, ifs and buts and what's and this and that. So I do agree with you, Steelers Freak, but most people aren't aware of the clauses that were put into that contract, that were put into that collective bargaining agreement. And it's actually like a really big deal because the NFL has basically made themselves untouchable, which then gets into, if they've made themselves untouchable, why are we worried about things like Kazee's hit to the point that he gets ejected? And not just ejected, he gets suspended. It's softer than 10-ply toilet paper. 100% JW. No one put it better. Exactly. Because what do they want? It's like they want the NFL. The NFL act like the league, and I mean this by those guys in New York, they act like it should just be matted. 1 million touchdowns, and the quarterback can never be touched, and this and that. Like, absolute joke. But Mark segues well through the comments. He says, Mason Rudolph. Yeah, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer comes straight into Christmas. 350 yards, 4 TDs. Man, I'd love to see that. But it is one of the topic points, so that'll open it up for us there. So, Mason Rudolph takes the game takes the puck by the horns or the antlers is probably what I should say this week against the Bengals. He's got obviously the history with the Bengals. We know some of that sort of stuff. We know the history more with the Browns, the history with the Ravens, particularly with he got knocked out there. Then with the Browns, he had the helmet-to-helmet collision. So that kind of obviously really sucked with all that stuff that went on at that time. Mason Rudolph has a career record as starting QB of 5-4-1, completing 66.7% of his passes for 3 TDs. Sorry, that's in 2023. What am I saying? He basically, it's an interesting thing for him. 16 TDs in his career, 11 interceptions. He looked really good when he played his first full game against the Cleveland Browns at the end of that season, which Baker Mayfield pulled like a rabbit out of the hat to win that. Hats off to Baker Mayfield. Kind of killed the Green Bay Packers the other day. That's pretty crazy. I love the attitude, man. Imagine if Rudolph went on a run. Imagine if Kenny Pickett's playing backup to Mason Rudolph. But man, that's where it's going. It's going to flag football. That's where it's going. But anyway, Mason comes back. Now, one of the unsung narratives that I feel is there around Brett Mason Rudolph III, did you know that's his name? Brett Mason Rudolph, is really around the fact that he had a really nice relationship with Diontae Johnson back in 2019. He didn't have the running back the core that the Steelers have right now. Although Najee Harris pretty flat in that Colts game, but that was always going to be the case. Buckner will always play well against a guy like Najee Harris. But yeah, anyway, back to Mason Rudolph. I'm really excited to see what we can see. I think he was given garbage minutes. I think the Steelers were on the back foot. I think guys had really fought. I can't believe I'm saying this in some ways, but I can because I saw what I saw on the field. But I do think some of those Steelers offensive guys gave up, particularly on the line. I think most of the line needs to be swept away this offseason. I think it's bye-bye Cole, bye-bye Okorafor. Dan Moore's on the bench only because he's on cheap. Otherwise, it'd be bye-bye too. You can save like $14.5 million by moving Cole and Okorafor on. Even you just got to cut them and you got to cut your losses there. Fine, so be it. See you later, mate. But back to Mason Rudolph. If this team has any sort of fight in it, at least he's a leader. At least he doesn't, bitch and moan in press conferences. I thought he was very, very diplomatic when he got interviewed in the lead up to last week's game. And so I'm really confident to see what Mason Rudolph can do this week. He'll use the tight ends better. He'll look at throwing the ball into space. If they can even get guys like Allen Robinson who've done nothing, get him open. He'll do pretty well. I think he'll leverage Jaylen Warren in the short passing game or Najee Harris, depending on what the Steelers actually scheme. But I think if Jaylen Warren gets into space, we'll see that. I feel like we haven't seen Jaylen Warren catching the football really that much compared to or on the key downs like we saw it earlier on in the season. And I think it's kind of hurt them. At least they know Trubisky isn't the guy. I mean, we've only been saying that for however freaking long. J-Devil, you see it, but also you make sure that you're first one in all of our shows. But I just think when it comes to when it comes to Trubisky, cut the losses. I said, save yourself 8.9 million over the next 2 years. Hunky dory, invest that back into a decent wide receiver, an offensive lineman, or better cornerback or safety. Use the money elsewhere, get cheaper at quarterback, and find someone who, if Kenny Pickett does go down, is a bit more reliable going into the future. Because no matter what Mason does over the next few weeks, it could be a swan song for him as well. It could be nice for him to ride out the season. Yeah, now, and that's the other thing too. If the Steelers lose this game, they'll have to think very seriously about whether Pickett comes back or not. Now, while there is a chance of making the playoffs, I definitely think Pickett's still in a shot to the mix, no matter if there was wins or losses against the Bengals or the Seahawks. But as soon as they're out of playoff contention, I think they call time on Pickett. Why would you bring him back? Just let him get healthy. So that's kind of a sub-narrative or a narrative that's going to lie under the surface over the next few weeks. Now, Mike Tomlin talks about being a winner, but you've got to, at this point, particularly it's going to affect you. And I still can't believe we're in this position. It could, when it comes to draft stock, and you're out of the playoffs, why are you going to injure, the guy that you still think is going to be a franchise quarterback? Yeah, exactly. Nothing but professional, as Jay Devil says. Nothing but professional. And it really, I think it sucks for Mason Rudolph, because I think that a different time, a different place could have been a really different thing. Really different thing for the Steelers. But also, they never had the offense for him that fits an air raid offense, which he was designed for. They never gave him a proper quarterback coach in his first few years. Ben never accepted him. Mark and I talked about that last time we did a live. But yeah, it's pretty average. Play Rudy the last 3 games. He does. He does. He probably needs. He'll be world's better at the competence center. Yeah, he probably needs another. I don't want him to go much more than 8 or 10 pounds of lean muscle, because I think I still want him to be agile enough. But yeah, he needs a competent center. A lot of people talk about the rise of Josh Allen. Josh Allen changed in part because he got a much better center. After the first year, I think it was after the first 2 years, they swapped out their center. They said, this guy's not good enough. The center is vital to a rookie quarterback's development. They swapped him out, and look at how much difference that's made. Now, the Bills haven't played that well this season. They've had a lot of issues at times. But we were talking about them as potential Super Bowl contenders for a couple of seasons in the last few years. So that's huge. An OC makes all the difference as well. That is huge. And so that's a really good segue. I do want to keep this pretty short to sort of half an hour or so. But that's a good segue too into Mike Tomlin. A lot of talk about Mike Tomlin over the past few weeks, really since mid-season, and fair enough. I don't think Mike Tomlin moves on. I don't think Mike Tomlin is fired this offseason. There is the slight chance at trade. I heard Ray Fittipaldo talk about Michael Strahan's been talking about possible trade, and he's good mates with Jay Glazer, and Jay Glazer knows Tomlin, and maybe they're fishing for a trade to someone like the Carolina Panthers. I don't see that happen. I don't necessarily see that happening early on in the offseason. I don't think the Steelers value the whole trading up and trading down and the value of mid-round draft picks. I mean, it is a new front office with Weidl and Khan, so it's hard to hang your hat on it. But if this was Colbert, they'd never value the pick over the coach. They just wouldn't. I mean, kind of why would you when you think about Devin Bush and some of the other first-rounders we've had? But the whole big question mark is the offensive coordinator. And the reason why that's such a big influence on Mike Tomlin is, and Chris Carr's talked about this as Stack on his shows, who are you going to bring in for 1 year? Right? The enemy ain't coming in for 1 year unless he knows he's on a fast track to being the coach. Maybe you get Kellen Moore, maybe you get Clint Kubiak. You're probably not getting Ben Johnson from the Lions. He'll go to another team that sacks someone. He might end up replacing the enemy in Washington. Because, I mean, if you can do what he can do with Jared Goff, maybe you can do the same thing with Sam Howell. Yeah, still cheap. Exactly. I never find myself agreeing with Brady either. I do like avocado, not avocado ice cream. But, yeah, back to Tomlin. So, they're all interesting narratives. I would say after the post-match press conference this week, I don't think I've seen Tomlin like that before. He clearly knows that there's a lot of players on this team. We all know that they're not getting the message. Even Rich Eisen, massive Mike Tomlin fan, said that there's clearly guys not responding. This was a big deal as well, and what kept Bill Cowher in with losing seasons was that the front office, the Rooney family, felt that Cowher still had the locker room. But I kind of weigh two things. And it feeds into exactly what Jess says. I think Coach T runs his contract. So do I. Now, I think that the two things that are into this are, do you care more about how to put this? Do you have more faith in Mike Tomlin's record or the 16 to 17 players that are able to be moved on this year because they're on one-year deals or they're third-string guys, plus the other guys like Trubisky that's contracted next year that they should be moving on, plus guys that I've talked about like Cole and Okorafor, and like, do most Steeler fans sit here and think that Patrick Peterson's worth $9 million on the cap next year based on what we've seen? I don't know. I think that's going to be an interesting question for the Steelers in the offseason. Now, if you're investing in him as an investment into the development of JPJ, I'm a bit more open to it. But I don't think he's worth $9 million on the cap. Maybe Khan does something smart and does a voidable year and just restructures that contract or extends that contract through a false year. I think there'll be a lot of that. I think there'll be a lot of void. But with that in mind, I've got more trust in giving Tomlin an extra year with fresher players, with a new perspective, with a new offensive coordinator, than I do sacking Mike Tomlin and then trusting in a lot of this roster. That's where I'm at on it. If they do go down the route of moving Mike Tomlin on or trading him, then the coach comes into question. At the moment, I wouldn't say that there's someone I love out there that's not already a head coach. And I've heard some people talk about Frank Reich. Why, after what we saw with the Panthers, would we brought Frank Reich here? Unless you dead set that Kenny Pickett is the guy, 100%. I love Kenny Pickett. I want Kenny Pickett to be the guy. But even I am not dead set that Kenny Pickett is definitely going to be the guy. Pretty hopeful, pretty confident that we'll see that play out. Then Frank Reich is not your man as head coach. I think it should be Brian Flores, sorry. Now, I know people go, well, hang on, he's a defensive coach. But he's a modern coach. He's someone that I think will actually listen to an offensive coordinator. That's what I kind of like. I really like that. I think you bring him in there. I think you want to see someone that like is not afraid to call more of the plays. I know that like Terrell Austin probably moves on then, or at least Brian Flores will be in an educated position to make that decision with Mike Tomlin. Then Mike, like in terms of he'll be as in a good a position as Mike Tomlin would be to make that decision. But Terrell Austin should be looking over his shoulder. I'm really, really hopeful he gets a college football gig this offseason. I'm hopeful that he goes, you know what, this was a punish of the season for me as defensive coordinator. I don't really have the players to do what I want to do. It's not really the type of defense I want. I've kind of learned as much as I can from the Steelers and Mike T. I'm moving on. If he did that, I'd feel terrific. Absolutely terrific. That's what I would. I think you're right, Jay. I think they'll definitely I'm really confident they'll kill the draft. They'll probably get heavier in the trenches, which is good. We obviously want that more on the offensive side. But we need another wide receiver. Like they should move on from Deontay. Allen Robinson's not worth the money we've got him on. Maybe you keep him if you move Deontay on because you kind of have to. Where's the development? We all talk about the development, the wasted season for Pickett. We don't even know what Calvin Austin is for this team. Like, what's Calvin Austin? I'm still confident in Calvin Austin. But can we get an OC in the building that knows how to use Calvin Austin, that knows how to use 4.2 speed? Please figure out how to use Darnell Washington. That's what I want to see. I want to see an offensive coordinator come in and use the athletic weapons. And if these guys just aren't good enough, then find the heck of their replacements. Don't keep them here. Man, I wish. Man, Marky D, I reckon I started talking to you about Austin in week 4 of the season last year, about him being a problem. We're week 15, 16 this year and still talking about it. But yeah, still chick, exactly. We don't draft pieces. We draft pieces. We don't use them right. Which, like Nick Herbig is going to be a good example of this. If Nick Herbig continues to develop, was that third rotation, and this Steelers team are a couple of pieces away, what are they going to do with Alex Highsmith? I mean, I have a theory that Alex Highsmith doesn't play out this contract with the Steelers. I've got a theory he doesn't play out 3 years with the Steelers. That's up there, right? You probably not. There's only so much you can trade Nick Herbig for on a 4-year deal by the time he's developed. So that's going to be a whole interesting narrative that we can talk about once as 2024 rolls through. But yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out, Jer. Mike, look, we know that Matt Canada couldn't use him. Canada said, "I don't know how to use a player like that." Baffled me. Absolutely baffled me. Well, still, it's funny you bring this up. I've now heard one national media, one Steelers media commentator talk about this. Rich Eisen talked about it from the perspective of TJ Watt. He interviewed TJ Watt because obviously he called the game against the Colts. And he said that when you ask TJ Watt why he likes Mike Tomlin, it's that Mike Tomlin's super level. He wants to, no matter it's a win or a loss, no matter how good the team's going, he wants Mike Tomlin to be the coach. He's your franchise player right now. They don't have a quarterback franchise player. They've got the best defensive player in the league is their franchise player. If he wants Mike Tomlin, you got to let Mike Tomlin ride out his final year of his deal. Now, I know we go for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We don't go for the TJ Watts. But there's no way they're letting this guy go, right? But I could imagine TJ getting frustrated, like you say. But even in that case, I think they'd say to him, hey, we paid you the most, outside of Ben, the most amount of guaranteed money. I think it's technically, outside of Ben's course of his career, the most amount of money, we're keeping you, but we're moving your mate on because we need to make decisions. I think that's more likely to happen. But TJ wants to win a championship. But TJ wants to win a championship in Pittsburgh as well. His brother didn't get to those sort of heights. I don't think he's concerned about that. I mean, the bloke's almost played 100 games and 100 sacks. I mean, I find that terrific. I can't even. DJ's gone. No, DJ, I can't see them keeping DJ. You can't. The thing is that it's in my mind, you can't have Pickens and DJ in the same locker room. Nah, you can only have one of them. And you're not going to get Pickens out of these bad habits that we saw. I mean, they're not blocking for that run play on the weekend. Like, I have not criticized anything from Pickens up until now. That's not on. But Deontay's a sourpuss and has been a sourpuss for so freaking long. I think they moved Deontay, honestly. I really do. I think he's gone. $10 million. And I talked about this in a comment. I might explore it in a video later in the week. I've got an idea of who they should bring in for him. And matches pretty much dead set salary cap for salary cap. Another team that's in a bit of turmoil, but could show something. Another team that could probably use Diontae Johnson better than we can on a faster track. So I might do that video later in the week, Jer. But I also was exploring, yesterday I might as well bring this one up because it has come up in conversation. I was exploring I was sitting there on Over the Cap, and Over the Cap sometimes kills the live stream internet because StreamYard just doesn't like them, no matter how fast your internet is. But I'll try and do it. So hopefully that's come up. So I tried to use their trade feature because I'm a paid sub of Over the Cap. And I went Diontae Johnson to the Rams. Now, this is an actual team for the other player that I'll do a show later on in the week about. Diontae Johnson to the Rams because I think Matt Stafford, their wide receiver room's looking they're a bit threadbare after Kupp and Puka Nacua. And I thought, trade him to the Rams on a faster track, get him on the West Coast, all that sort of stuff. Trade him for Rob Havenstein, who has also 1 year left on his deal, top right tackle. Immediately, you can move Broderick Jones to left tackle. You've got a top 10, 12 right tackle in the league. And Ernest Jones, linebacker. Now, Ernest Jones is about 6'4", 238 pound. Should really fit. Obviously, they play a bit more 4-3 most of the time with the Rams, but he can fit within the Steelers' defense. So we're better than probably more overall all-rounder than maybe E-Rob, but not as big a hitter as E-Rob. He's probably like a replacement for Quan, really. And will not pair nicely with Cole Holcomb. Means you can draft a guy you can develop right in the 5th round, 6th round in the draft next year. But even that wasn't considered good enough value. And the winner was still the Rams. So then I put up a 3rd round pick into it, and the winner on the Fitzgerald Spielberger, I don't want to go into the specifics of that, but the trade balancer still said still said that it was in favor of the Rams versus the Steelers. The Steelers giving up just Damontae for Rob and for Ernest Jones. Now, Ernest Jones on a rookie deal. I think Rob's got 1 year left on his deal, and the Steelers got a third rounder. If I were the Rams, I wouldn't do this. I'd maybe through with a fourth and a fifth. But hey, so that's just one example. Like, I'm not sitting here deeply advocating this specific trade, but I was just having to play around with what a trade for Damontae could look like. And there's definitely opportunities. There are some teams that will take him, and he'd be good as a second wide receiver on a team. Top wide receiver, but in a team that's going to win more, 12 plus games, in all likelihood, he's a good pick. 100% good pick. If I had my way, I would have probably clicked on Steve Avila as well rather than the third round pick. I love Avila. I'm really disappointed that he went to the Rams. I thought he was a sure Steeler. I think he can be an amazing center with the right development as well. But hey, that is what it is. That we don't have him on the team, and that is what it is. We can trade DJ to the Bears, but they've got all those first round wide receivers. They've got DJ Moore, they got Darnell Mooney. Those guys all came out today and said they want Justin Fields in the Chicago Bears. They want him to stay as the quarterback there. So, we'll see. Well, Jay, I think you'll like the show. Depending on what news comes out overnight, it might even be my show for tomorrow, I think, because I've had a few comments in different videos lately about this one. So I'm going to talk about this DJ trade. I do happen to be big fan of the player that I'm mentioning, which is why I thought about it. But I don't think Steelers fans would hate it either. And it is someone that is very not notorious, but exposed to Steelers at some point in the last few years. So I'll give you that little hint or clue to who that might be. Steeler Chick says, and I'm going to wrap up the show soon. So if you've got any Q&A, throw it in there. I'd love to end out on some Q&A. That's one of the big reasons I love doing lives. I love seeing what you guys throw in there and commenting on it. Steeler Chick says, I want a season where we're not jinxed. I know. Oh my gosh. Quite honestly, we brought in 3 starting guys this year and we still had the problem. Yeah, and this is why you got to get younger. When you're gonna be relying on guys that are older than 28 at that position, it's like relying on a 28-year-old or older running back. The guy's probably not going to play more than 80% of your games. That is what it is. The other problem over the Steelers is, what if Cole Holcomb doesn't come back properly? And I am hoping that's not the case. I'm a massive Holcomb fan. But what if he struggles to come back from the knee injury? That could be a big issue. Yeah, well, Mike Tomlin said he's not available this week. And then if you lose this week and you're 7-8, do you bring Minkah back with a broken hand and a bum knee? There's way too much money invested in him to make it work. Yeah, J Devil, you guessed it. You guessed it. I guessed it 100%. I probably still do the video, but yeah, I do think a trade with him. Well, you know what? Let's have fun with it. I'll still answer questions, but let's have fun with it. Let's explore. Let's explore a trade with it. Let's do it. I will do that now. Let's see. Let's see if it will pull up for me in the trade calculator. There we go. Let's see, because it's logged me out. All right, let's go. Steelers. Am I still showing it? No, we will bring it up. Yeah, Jack Campbell can play middle linebacker, but the Lions aren't trading for him. There's Chad Muma. There's Chad Muma out at the Jags, who Shannon and I both really liked. He's sort of sitting behind the top guy that starts with an O, the plays at the Jags, and Devin Lloyd. Maybe he becomes available. So that could be an interesting one. It's not Oladokun, it's like Olakun, I think it is. Anyway, let's explore this super trade for the Steelers trading CJ Stroud. Why are they coming up with the hang on. Why are they coming up with Texans players? Here we go. All right, Deontay Johnson, and then we're going to go Los Angeles Chargers. It's one of my favorite players in the league, in Keenan Allen. Now, the winner is the Steelers. Now, remember, this is APY, so it's not their exact salary cap. Like Deontay Johnson's salary cap hit next year is about 15. The Steelers would eat 5.8 million. Steelers would save about 10 million on their cap. I think Keenan Allen is about 10, 11 million next year as well. So they're about the same. In fact, I'll pull that up. I think he is actually due. He might be due 11 million. But I'll pull that up. Yeah, so Keenan Allen in 2024 gets paid. Base salary is 18 million. Yeah, so he's a lot for them. So to hand that off to the Steelers would be something they probably really want to do. I don't want to open too many windows with over the cap though, because over the cap just sucks internet. Yeah, I wanted them to draft him as well. And I think he would have been one of the options potentially if the Steelers hadn't traded up to get Broderick Jones. Because even if he wasn't, there was a lot of talk whether he was definitely a first-round player, but the fifth-year option is something that comes into the mix when you think about a player like that. Yeah, exactly. Keenan Allen torched him. Keenan Allen always finds a way to get free, to get open. He can make combat catches. He's got sure hands. He's also, I don't know what the Chargers' strategy's been the last few years between like drafting like Quentin Johnson and paying Mike Williams and a couple of other wide receivers they've got plus Eckler. Like I feel like he's been wasted in that offense. But the interesting conundrum is that when he was drafted, some people felt he was overdrafted. And he was a big Tom Telesco favorite. Well, the Chargers just sacked Staley and Tom Telesco. So he might be more available than we could have think. No, we wouldn't have. I thought if Campbell slipped to 32, we could have picked him because I also didn't think JPJ, while I felt I had a early second round grade on him, I thought someone in the league would pick him earlier. So, yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting scenario. Should we look at the defense that Dan Campbell plays and Mike Tomlin? What's up, Reginald? Thanks for checking us out live. As I always like seeing dogs in the little profile images. Yeah, but anyway, we're exploring this trade, Keenan Allen. Now the winner's the Steelers. So, and whether the Chargers want to bring that into their locker room, I don't know. But remember, the winner here, they're not balancing here the salary cap money. The Chargers probably wouldn't mind this $7 million salary cap money. Maybe you move someone else with him. I wouldn't necessarily be sitting there. I think the Steelers need every draft pick that they can get, but maybe they trade like a fourth next year for a fourth this year or something quirky like that gets put into the trade. Then I would love to do that. But I'm still probably going to explore that. I'm still really explore that in a video and do it a bit deeper. But yeah, you picked it, Daredevil. I love that. Steeler Chick says, no, I'm just a bit slow on the internet right now. Cooper DeJean is a great cornerback coming out of Iowa. Yeah, I've seen that name thrown around. We're going to look at him in the offseason for sure. Iowa's players have a chip. Well, yeah, look at Greg Kittle. Terrific player. Steeler Chick then says DeJean and JPJ. Well, I've also seen rumors that the mental blank. The other with Penn State's got right now, they might bring him in and combine him with JPJ and go all, PA cornerbacks. That might be what they choose to do. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay because the video is very slow on my side of things. So yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me all right. Let me know in the live chat if you can. Cool. All right. And then we had a question from Marky D who said, who wins the Super Bowl? I don't know. I reckon Miami are going to be in the big dance for the AFC Championship. I think it'll be interesting to see who actually makes it into the Super Bowl. I could see the 49ers. I think the 49ers make the Super Bowl. I don't know whether they win the Super Bowl. I don't think the Chiefs will be there. So yeah, it might be I still think the Bills could go on a run. So maybe it's the Bills. But I definitely think Miami are going to be up there. I think Miami are going to be really, really hard to beat as they go down the stretch on this thing. But I am struggling with the internet, not seeing any questions in the live chat. So I'm going to wrap it up. But hopefully that was a nice little update for everyone on all things Steelers. Big news overnight, lots of news to unpack. So we'll see what happens over the next few days, who's going to take in those spots. It does feel a little bit like the Steelers were falling apart at the seams. I don't think that's the case, but it is definitely going to be a very messy Christmas for the Pittsburgh Steelers, no matter when they win or lose this game. There's a lot to figure out over the last few weeks. I agree, though, Jet. I definitely agree. The Steelers can sneak in and win it all. And Steel Chick's exactly right. If we can lean on the guys that have the chip on their shoulder, not entitled guys, we're going to be successful. And so that's where they need to go in this. And I think it's funny. Last year, the team rallied when the threat. Oh, there we go. The internet's kind of fixed back for me. So last year, the team rallied when Mike Tomlin's losing record or winning record was on the line. Maybe something happens. Maybe they do that again. Man, you're back on the Make-A-Wish drinks. No, I like it. It's good stuff. But yeah, I think I honestly do think the Steelers can still rally. And I think it's more whoever doesn't rally probably could well be out the door. Really, they could well be out the door. And so they damn well should. We deserve better from the Pittsburgh Steelers as the fans. The players that are trying their guts out deserve better. Honestly, I think much of those people that hate Mike Tomlin out there, Mike Tomlin deserves better. He just does. But yeah, it'll be interesting to wait to see all these things happen. We'll have more shows to come, but just because the Steelers are going to have a messy Christmas doesn't mean you guys are. It means you guys are going to probably have a Merry Christmas despite what the Steelers do. I can't wait. Like last week, I was excited to put some meat on the smoker. I didn't do that. The Steelers lost. Maybe I should have. But this week, I'm looking forward to it. We've got Steelers Bengals on our Sunday down under Christmas Eve. I'm going to have the turkey in the smoker. I'm going to have the ham because we cook hams in Australia. I'm going to have the ham in the oven. It's going to be like awesome. Just the house full of the nice, yummy meats. And then watching the football, it's going to be awesome. We're going to duck out with some of that live chat. You guys enjoy that chat. Thanks for tuning in. As I say, we've got more content to come. If you missed that show where I talked about the defense and the Steelers getting their bang for their buck, hope you check that out. We talked a little bit about those trends in this show. We're going to go position by position over the next few weeks. But it is interesting. I think the Steelers have got to look across the board at attitude, at pay, at development, at progression, at long-term futures. And that's how they're the sort of 5 key things the Steelers need to be looking at as they evaluate the roster going into 2024. But I think they need to start looking at that. If they know any of those areas, they should already be looking at it now. Let these 3 games, let guys fight and play for their positions. Maybe they need to send out a memo to some of those players' agents and say, guys, we'll be cutting guys that don't show up over the next 3 or 4 weeks, or we'll be moving people on if they haven't already. It'd be pretty radical. But yeah, one final thing as well. Absolute BS on Kazee. Absolute BS. It's hard to think the league isn't rigged or the league isn't against the Steelers when you see stuff like that. But the Steelers will find a way to overcome it. And yeah, I'm going to leave it. Mark says, F the Bengals. Jedable says, Bengals can kiss it. Jedable says, catch a 46ers. That's it. Always a great show, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Always want to give you guys the best content. And enjoy your evenings, mornings, lunchtimes, depending on when you're listening to this, depending on where you're listening from. As always, go Steelers.